Mhm. Hello, everybody. So glad that you could join us this morning. It is right now at 10 o'clock Central and 11 o'clock Eastern. So it's the officially scheduled time for the webinar to start. We do have people coming in every couple of seconds. And so we're going to give this another 1 or 2 minutes to make sure everybody's got logged in and has their sound and video set up. And so we'll be back with you to get started in about 2 minutes. Thanks. Okay, hi everybody, welcome. We're just a couple minutes past the hour. We do have a few more people still signing in, but we're going to go ahead and get started in the interest of time. We do have a lot of great things to show you today. So welcome, first of all, on behalf of the ICATT Apprenticeship Program, the Matt Squared Apprenticeship Program, and the Illinois Manufacturers Association to our webinar on how apprenticeships can work as a workforce development tool, the strategies, the ins and outs, and the best practices. So we're really excited. Before we get started with the meat of the presentation, there are, of course, a couple of housekeeping things we want to make sure to cover. So most of us at this point have used GoToWebinar a number of times, but as a reminder, you are mainly looking for the small control panel that's going to allow you to access the features. It very often starts out minimized, so you're looking for a really tiny box, and it's that red arrow that's the easiest thing to look for. So do click that red arrow to open. You can see there's a sections for the chat, sections for the Q&A, and also under audio, if something goes wrong with your connection and you do want to dial in to listen to the discussion, the audio should have the dial-in numbers for the phone so that you can listen in as well. So please do get ready to use that. We would love to hear from your questions for the panelists. We'd love to hear any comments you have in the chat. So we'd love to make this as interactive as possible. There's also the option to raise your hand. So everybody see the little hand with the green arrow. If you'd like to practice, go ahead and click that now, raise your hand, and then we'll put it back down again. So that if you'd like to ask a question instead of typing it or have a comment to make, we can also unmute you so that you can ask that verbally as well. So that's the GoToWebinar. We will also be recording this webinar so that we can have it as a record for people who couldn't join us today. So that's your you've now been officially informed that the webinar will be recorded. And so you can also go back and listen to the great insight. As a practice for getting this to be interactive, we are going to start out with a quick poll. So get ready, a poll is going to come up on your screen for attendees to answer. And that poll is so we get a little bit of a feel for how many of you have experience with apprenticeship programs. And so Doris, can you go ahead and launch that first poll? All right, so yes, so the question is whether your company does have experience, and we'll give you a couple of minutes. It's a quick one, so we won't give you too long to answer. Please do go ahead and answer. All right, this is an easy enough one that I think we're gonna, I think we'll be done. Doris, can we see the results of that?
Yes, 51% said yes, 29% no, and 22% said yes, but I was not involved.
Okay, all right, great. That's really interesting. I'm very curious with 50% having experience with apprenticeship programs now. And so since you have experience, then I definitely want you to be active in the chat and the questions when it gets to that point. So looking forward to that interaction. So good job, guys. You were able to interact. It's not just sit and listen today. The next thing I want to point out is actually at the end of the day today, we've got some giveaways for you. And the first one is going to be free participation in a Train the Trainer course that we have in 2021. The idea behind this course is that a great technician is not automatically a great trainer. So it's teaching skilled technicians, specifically for apprenticeships, how to be a better trainer and more effective. So we've got a free participation in that as the first giveaway. The second one would be a gift box, the Home for the Holidays gift box. And this includes a toy puzzle that you can do with a family, so a family activity, cookies, hot chocolate mix, which is delicious hot chocolate, by the way, and then the famed iconic Christkindl Market mugs. So this is a great thing to do with your family in the holidays. The third prize is the Prost gift box. And this is where you've got mix to make German pretzels. You've got some seasoning and mix to make the cheese dip, some salami and snacks, mustard for your pretzels, and plastic beer steins. There are some ingredients not included in this. So you need some things for the cheese, and the beer is also not included, unfortunately. But at least you can have that mix to make that. They're all from our Christkindl Market in Chicago, and that I just want to say that market, it's unfortunately not able to be live this year, but it will be online with classes and entertainment activities, scavenger hunt for kids, and more. Oh, and shopping. So thanks very much to the Christkindl Market for supporting us with these giveaways. But that's going to be the end. You do have to sit through all of the fascinating discussion before we're going to find out who wins there. So just a heads up that we're looking for that. Right. So we're talking about the skills gap. Everybody's talking about the skills gap. And what we find is, when people can't find the people they're looking for, there are three factors. There are three aspects of that. And that is sometimes the people are aging and about to retire. So you've got the people, but you won't have them for long. Sometimes it's about the current workforce or the mature workforce. So there just aren't enough people on the workforce. They're sticking with their jobs. Or they're there, but they don't have the skills that you need. And then there's also looking to the future. It's just the young people are not choosing these jobs. So you're okay in the future, you're okay now, but what are you going to do in 5 or 10 years? And so the next poll, so another interaction that I'm going to ask you to do is what are those aspects that you have? Which of these is facing your company? So Doris, if you could put that poll up. All right, that's probably enough time. Let's go ahead, and if we can see those results.
69% answered that the aging workforce and retirement concerns are the biggest challenge, and 79% said lack of skilled workers on the job market, and 52% voted for young people not choosing manufacturing.
Okay, wow. So really, that's interesting. It's really across the board. And so, yeah, so let's look at training. So with this skills gap, it's sort of required in every presentation of the skills gap to have the statistics. I'm sure you've all seen these numbers about what this means and how those problems you're facing are part of this bigger picture. So I'm not going to talk about these. We've all seen these numbers a couple of times. But what I would like to talk about is some of the implications of these shortages that not all companies have really good insight to. And so I'm going to start out with of how the skills gap costs more than you think it does. You know it's a problem, but it's even more expensive. So I'm going to start with maintenance because that's very often where we, with companies where they're using their apprentices and where that shortage is. And so they're having overtime, they're having turnover in maintenance, having trouble hiring. And so very often they think that this is the cost of the problem, $50,000 of overtime in maintenance last year or something. Some companies do take the next step to realize that that is causing their unplanned downtime. This is really the big number. This is probably the largest cost of the skills gap. And interestingly, the American Productivity and Quality Center reports that when they run the numbers for manufacturers, they say most manufacturers underestimate the cost of this as much as 300% that they're underestimating. There's more unplanned downtime than they think. And that actually matches our experience talking to companies. So this is really the biggest factor. This is where you get into the millions cost of the skills gap, typically. But this isn't the last thing that happens. When you're running late because of unplanned downtime, then you've got your overtime in production. That's called adding another cost that some companies have as a different cost center, so they don't realize it all adds up. When you're hurrying, you're making mistakes. And this can also be if you have a production worker separate from maintenance that isn't there. So, you know, not just the quality issues, but the broken machines. You're getting your service calls from the studio OEM. I talked to a company with $3 million in spare parts inventory that they're trying to reduce. You know, you've got more downstream costs for that. If you're running late, right, so you got to get those parts to your customer. Expedited shipping, one company, $50,000 in expedited shipping costs in a year. But that's actually okay. The company was okay with that $50,000 cost, sort of, because at least they didn't have late delivery. And late delivery is really where you know, you start to get those those bigger risks that aren't on paper, but they're out there. You know, some industries obviously have the financial penalties for being late, so that's only specific industries. But then you get these customer relationships. What is the cost of risking that customer relationship for your late delivery? You know, then you get into risk factors in the larger one. Now, it is, you know, sometimes these costs are where you can see right now we have this problem with downtime, but sometimes companies are doing okay now. They're struggling through now with the staff that they have. It's not great, but they're struggling through. But the problem that they have that they're not always keeping an eye on is these missed opportunities. So missing the company growth targets, sometimes that, you know, affects then executive compensation if the growth targets is missed. And what's actually interesting is we do also talk to the companies where those missed opportunities, they can't take a job and the salespeople are getting frustrated. And so the salespeople are leaving. And we all know the cost of an replace an experienced salesperson is pretty high as well. And so what you really actually get is just costs that touch every aspect of your business, but they're hidden and you're used to paying them. And this is just part of the running costs every year. And it's hard to figure out that this is actually the cost of the skills gap. And so this is where we get to the actual skills gap is costing you millions of dollars every single year, typically. You know, and if you're on this call, you probably have a workforce skills gap issue. If you don't have a problem with that, you're probably not listening today. So we're going to assume that most people recognize that the skills gap is a problem. But I did just want to shed some light on how big this problem can be. So let's talk now about solving this problem and the ways that some of our companies have solved the problem. So I would like to introduce our panelists and our speakers today and ask everybody to go ahead and turn your webcams and your mics on, well, all the panelists, to turn your webcams and microphones on. So I am going to ask everybody to introduce themselves. So you can go through and say a word about your role in your company before we get into the discussion today. So I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen so that we can just see everybody's smiling face. And we'll go ahead and actually we're going to start now with Chris. So Chris, could you kick us off, please?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Chris Hunt. I am the technical trainer here at Brose. At Brose, we are an automotive supplier. We have 6 different locations in North America, And of these 6 different locations, I have apprenticeship programs in all of them, basically. And we've graduated so far 20 different graduates, and out of 8 different, we have a total of 8 different cohorts. And my entire job at Brose is to train my apprentices, as you can probably see behind me, to get ready to do the job at Brose.
All right, great. Next, I'm going to skip next over to Verena. Verena, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hello everyone. I work for Buhler. We are a Swiss company, and in North America, we are headquartered in Minnesota, Minneapolis area. Our company develops technologies for the food and non-food solutions. For instance, we are world market leader in the flour milling industry, and also in the chocolate industry. Very interesting to know. We have been running an apprenticeship program since 2012 and joined the ICATT program this year with 5 apprentices. And my role at Buhler, I'm a senior HR-Generalist. I'm the liaison between ICATT and our apprenticeship academy, and at the same time also to the technical colleges that we work with.
Great. Jason, would you like to go next?
Sure, I will. Hello, I'm Jason Wazikowski. I am the North American Training Manager from Mauser Packaging. We are a producer for industrial packaging as well as commercial packaging, so from steel drums all the way down to cat litter containers. We are an international company, so we have actually been running an apprenticeship in our German as well as European offices for almost a century, and we've only recently, in the last year and a half, begun to build out the program here in North America based on the German models. So I have the overall responsibility for building the program, rolling it out, and managing it at all of our 160 sites across the country.
Great, thanks. And Tony, would you go next?
Hi everybody, I'm Tony. I work at Scot Forge. We are a metals forging company. Just like a blacksmith, only we do very, very, very large parts up to 300,000 pounds. We're heavy into the aerospace business, the defense business, mining, and just all kind of stuff where you need extra special metals. Scot Forge was one of the early partners with the ICATT program. We've graduated many students. I'm the organizational development leader, and our philosophy at Scot Forge was that with the lack of workforce development people out there, that we were going to start growing our own talent. So we developed a farm team concept. So we're actually starting with high schoolers and then working them into the apprenticeship program. So we get a chance to try them out. They get a chance to try us out, and we help set their careers going forward. And ICATT plays a very, very large role with that. We work very symbiotically with McHenry County College to do most of our training for us. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tony. And Jim, it's great to have you here. So, could you introduce yourself and IMA's role in all of this?
Certainly. Thank you very much, Virginia. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Nelson, and I represent the Illinois Manufacturers Association, the nation's oldest and largest manufacturers association in the U.S. We've been around since 1893. And I wasn't there when it started, but I'm old enough to be there for a good chunk of time. We've been engaged through the IMA Education Foundation in an effort to try to close the skills gap. And while recognizing that because technology is always advancing, we realized that the real mission is to keep that skills gap as narrow as possible. The simple definition of that, of course, is what is being taught in the classroom versus what is actually needed on the floor. So my role has been to, beginning at the middle school level, introduce young people to the wide array of occupations that can be had in manufacturing, including production, including front office occupations, and then building those pathways through high school, through community college, into employment, using a number of different strategies, including work-based learning opportunities. About 6 years ago now, Mark Tompkins, the president of the German American Chamber of Commerce, and I were at a meeting. We started talking about work-based learning opportunities, and we started talking about apprenticeships and how Europe was still using apprenticeships, a vehicle which the US had kind of let fall to the wayside in the 1960s and 70s. And after really looking at various apprenticeship models in Great Britain, in Switzerland, in Denmark, in Austria, in other countries, the German system of the dual education system used in Germany seemed to me to be the most comprehensive way to train a skilled workforce, because it really brought into structure on-the-job training that is aligned to related technical instruction. So, as I say, beginning 6 years ago, we created this partnership called the ICATT Apprenticeship Program. We're expanded now into 12 community colleges around the state of Illinois. ICATT has also now working in the MAP2 regime in Michigan, as well as other states, Wisconsin, Indiana, Nebraska, and yeah. It's expanding so quickly, I sometimes forget where we are. So I'm going to stop there for now, but this has been a remarkable partnership, and one that I strongly encourage your favorable consideration.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jim. I certainly appreciate it. And just for everybody in the audience, so we're going to be talking a lot about company-specific strategies and how it worked at specific companies. But Jim is going to be stepping in whenever he feels, whenever he's got insight, because he has worked with so many of the companies across the state of Illinois. So we're looking forward to that sort of big picture insight anywhere where you think it fits, Jim. So I'd like to start out with this discussion on really sort of this big picture. So Tony, you had mentioned, you mentioned that apprenticeships are part of this whole farm team question of your even starting young with the students, with high school students. So it's just one piece of your workforce, the workforce development. So I'd like to hear from the other companies briefly, if you'd like to share, how does apprenticeships fit in with your overall workforce strategy? Jason, did you want to start?
I'll happily start on that. So for us, right now, our apprentice programs are focused entirely on the mechatronics program for our maintenance technicians. And in short, it is our solution towards the hiring crisis and the talent gap in our company for really the foreseeable future and onwards. Specifically for us, our maintenance technicians are really the crucial linchpin in our production. So no matter how much automation or how advanced our machinery becomes, without the capabilities of upkeeping and maintaining it, our production lines shut down. So this, given the standards, I think right now we're averaging 7 to 8 months to fill a singular mechanic or electrician position. And even then, the generational gap is still pretty large. So we are now laying the groundwork. This is how we're going to really expect to fill all of our maintenance needs from now and for really much forever. It's really, and the more companies that are taking part in doing this, the better it is for all companies throughout the industry, just because it in turn creates a better candidate market, a larger talent pool, and everyone benefits from that.
We may come back to that in a little bit. Thank you. Chris, do you want to go next about how the apprenticeships fit in with the overall strategy there at Brose for Workforce?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Jason's seeing here in Michigan. We're seeing similar problems where it's 7 to 8 months to fill a open maintenance technician role. And then really what you're getting is you're getting a person that doesn't know your company, doesn't know how your company works, maybe isn't up to speed on all of the technical that your company requires because they worked at another company that didn't have as much automation. So you're really having to build that skills gap even with the people that you're hiring. Whereas the apprentices, you're building that from day one. They're starting in your program and then they're learning it throughout the program. When they graduate, they know your company. and they want to stay because you've invested in them, and now they're investing in you because you've built this family feeling with them, and they feel like they're part of the team.
Okay. Verena, I know that similar difference.
Yes, very similar, because we are also training mechatronics, and we have seen really an uptick, or I mean, for the past decade and more and more is automated. So we don't just need the mechanical technicians that can work on our machines, but more and more they need the PLC knowledge, they need the software, the hardware knowledge, and that comes all together in the mechatronic, who is taught both sides of the machine and the automation side. So we're very happy that more and more companies jump on the bandwagon here. And as Jason said, the more this profile gets out there, the more it will help all of us with recruiting, retaining people. It's a standard set of skills that we teach and that we want then later in other employees, should we need to hire them, if we don't get enough apprentices in those positions.
Okay, but one thing I did want to check up on is some of the other panelists had mentioned using apprentices for maintenance technicians, but you have your apprentices, you're training apprentices for a different role, right? Can you tell what your apprentices are for?
Me?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
No, it is. We call them customer service engineers, but I would think it's the same profile. It's just not for machines at our locations. It's for the machines at our customers' locations, where we have our installed machine base, be it a chocolate factory, a milling company, or a die casting factory, where we send our apprentices or later graduates out there to help our customers if the line is down. Or even the installing and startup of all these equipments or production lines. So same thing, but for our customers.
Yeah, interesting. And Chris, I did want to circle back to you because you mentioned maintenance, but I understand that your apprentices can go into a number of different roles. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, so at Brose, we train them in mechatronics and technical product design. So these are the two professions that we train from. But a mechatronics person means that they understand everything from the calibration side to the mechanical side to the PLC and the programming side. So really there's 14 different positions that a mechatronics position can start at Brose. And from there, they would go from there inside the company. So a good example of this is like our head of production right now, or head of maintenance for our lead plant, started in as an apprentice in 2003, went from that to a maintenance technician, from a maintenance technician to an area supervisor, from an area supervisor to an industrial technician or an industrial engineer. Now he's the maintenance manager. So it's the beginning of a career set by doing something like this, and then trying to figure out what you like and what these apprentices really fit in. Because of that, and because we have all of these different roles, we put our apprentices in, a bunch of them, throughout the program, because if this one student comes in and says, oh, I love machining, and then from there they find out that, wow, I actually like programming more, then that's a great thing for us to learn, and we can move them into the programming field.
One, I wanted to, before we dive into how it works, I'd like you guys to think back to when you were starting the apprenticeship program. So Jason doesn't have to think very far back. Some of you have to think a little bit farther. And then Jim, any insight from your members would be interesting as well. So what concerns did they have when they're starting in? What kind of pushback did you get within the company, or what were the main concerns that that you were facing when you started the program?
I can start on that one since it's very recent for me. The interesting thing is there wasn't too much pushback in terms of the generalized concept. Everyone could see the benefit to it, the gains, and really could see that, yes, we definitely need this in our organization to really secure our future. The challenge comes more in the implementation and when you start getting into the key components you need to make for a successful apprenticeship. The biggest ones and the pushback usually came from more at the site level, and it's more specifically pertain to two factors. One is who the mentors are going to be, and a concern that there would be some loss in production or availability to deal with issues at the sites because some of our top SMEs are going to be pulled away to be mentors. And I guess that was probably the biggest pushback point was, well, we're already behind, we're already short-staffed. Isn't this going to make our problems right now exponentially worse? And the only way to really address that is to show them that any loss, even the issues where if you structure it up properly with your mentors, even when your mentors have to be pulled away for a massive all hands type of issue, that is still a learning experience for your apprentices. So they're still going to get exposure. And if you do well early on and set up scheduling, which I will say with the ICATT and the structured curriculum, it makes it much easier to schedule out each week what their on-the-job lessons need to be, what their curriculum classes, what they're taking at the external schools are. So you can schedule that far ahead of time. So you can parse out, which mentors are going to be occupied at which times each week, and you build around that. It's actually outside of, I'd say, the first 4 to 6 weeks are usually the most difficult in terms of the stumbling blocks, and I call it's clunky. It's working, but it's not running smoothly, and people have questions and concerns. But once, especially because it's an entirely new type of structure and situation, but once you get past that initial clunky period, it actually runs fairly smoothly, and everyone gets acclimated to the new normal at the facility.
What other concerns did other of you have when you were starting the program? Tony, do you want to answer that one?
No, I want to go back to that other question about the early in the beginning. And I think costs was a big issue to get this thing rolling. I mean, we're an employee-owned company, and spending our employees' money to pay for a program was a little bit hard to do. However, we found a bunch of grant money out there, and through the grant money, we were able to seed the program, and now everybody sees the benefit of it, and they understand that the cost is well worth it. And then you start adding in the opportunity costs that you mentioned at the beginning of this program, and it just multiplies out from there that it's well worth the financial investment into an apprenticeship program.
Virginia, I think Tony makes an excellent point, and one that you have already laid out, is that employers are already spending as much, if not more, in their current practices. When you factor in all of those extraneous costs that are kind of hidden through the normal process. By having an apprenticeship approach, these are now budgetable items that can be built into the annual operating costs of the company so that they're expected, they're maintained, and they can actually over time, because of the structure of their apprenticeship and the on-the-job learning component, can actually reduce some of those extraneous costs and make them more manageable.
All right, anything to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add something to this. Is they were talking about how mentors, right? The mentors in the company feeling that their mentors would be taking off of one job and taken to the other. That is a very common feeling from the mentors that we have. But what they found is after working with the apprentice for a few days or a few weeks, they start sending the apprentice to the call instead of them. They finish up what they're working on, then go and help the apprentice catch up. So then they're becoming more and more productive faster because they've already worked with this person one-on-one. And then the other really big advantage to this apprenticeship program is the missed training from passed down knowledge of the traditional way of hiring. Traditionally, you'd take somebody, you'd put them on the job, they would learn as much as the person they're working with. Because of the apprenticeship program, they're going to school, they're getting the fundamental knowledge, they're bringing it to work and then applying it. So it's that you don't have to worry about the missed knowledge just because their mentor isn't the best.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good way to eliminate the tribal knowledge syndrome that we all have. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, and what to build on that, this is an extra advantage of when talking about how to, sell an apprentice program to the powers that be. The one ancillary benefit of the program is we have used this to piggyback into a practical skill enhancement training program for our existing employees. The issue, especially here in North America, has always been when we're hiring externally, they come in with very specialized skill sets, or they're a very good electrician, or they're a very good mechanic on specific type of equipment. So they might not have the broad base, what I call foundational knowledge in other areas. So we actually did an internal assessment of our entire maintenance technician staff in one of our divisions and found massive gaps in knowledge in things such as power transmission or fluid power. And because those are topics that are covered as part of the mechatronics program, we're able to basically piggy bank. We now have a training curriculum already set up that we can parse out and put our existing maintenance technicians through, so we can actually broaden their skills. So we move away from that tribal and much to a broader knowledge base. So our apprentices are actually the tip of the spear when it comes to enhancing the skills of quite a few of our long-term employees right now.
Mm-hmm. Right. I see nods. Good enough. People suggest. Okay. Well, we've got a question from the audience that was on my list, so I'm going to jump to a question anyway about this idea of retention. So I wanted to get into the nuts and bolts of how you manage the program, but retention is a big thing. If you're going to invest, how do you keep people? What do you do to ensure retention? Now, Verena, I know you've got very high retention anyway, so I'm going to actually turn it over to you to tell me what you really see as the key for retention here for your apprentices.
Yeah, so we like to hire 5 to 6 apprentices every year, and we have been doing that since 2012. And we see on the average maybe 1 apprentice leave per year, usually during the first few months of the apprenticeship. And then after graduation, we have 6 classes, I think, so far, graduating since we started our program. And we are at 81% of retention. So people are still here mostly after they graduate from the program. We integrate our apprentices fully into our workforce, I think, as everybody else does too. They have their benefits. They get their 401k contribution. They mature so fast compared. We hear that from parents. We hear that from mentors. Compared to maybe their peers that go to college and are there with us. They are with the experienced service engineers, and they mature so fast and learn so fast, and are fully accepted into our workforce. And I think that helps them feel part of it, feeling part of the team, and they know that we take care of them. So I think that's what makes us successful here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tony?
So I think with our program of bringing high school folks in and letting them work for a time period before they go into the apprenticeship program, it's that try before you buy environment where they get to try out the company, we get to try them out, and if it's mutually agreeable, then we put them into the program. And by that time, the retention rate remains the same because they've already had a chance to experience all that. Occasionally, we'll lose one. I lost one this semester because he dropped out of the mechatronics program to go to culinary school. So we consider that a success, the fact that he found out he did not want to be a maintenance guy. Yeah. So we look at that as successes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, Chris, I know you guys hire really early, right?
Pardon?
For the trial period? For trying the apprentice out, the try before you buy?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things that comes to mind for me is that the application process of the ICATT program, there's some pre-screening that goes on before individuals are referred as candidates for potential hire. That does, I think, 2 things. Number one, you end up with people who, one, really want to be in the program and have already made at least some level of decision that they want to be in manufacturing, that this is something that is is potentially fulfilling and something that they can be passionate about. The other thing that comes to mind is that in the employer's decision to select this candidate over other candidates, you're really telling that individual, we want you, we want to invest in your future. And here is the way that we're going to do it. Here's what we expect of you. And that relationship building starts on day one, because of course, apprentices are employees of the company at all times. And the company always retains the decision to hire and fire. So this isn't a internship program. This is a strategic approach to workforce development for every company.
Mhm. Right. So that was a little bit about what you can do at the beginning in the selection process to ensure retention. But in the apprenticeship programs that we manage right now are 3 years. Some are as short as a year. But all of the companies here today are working on a 3-year program. That's a long time. So what do you do throughout those 3 years, over the course of the 3 years, to help ensure that apprentice is going to stay?
Well, one thing that we're focusing in on is providing the relevance and the context for what the program is, and as they progress through it and get and expand on their skills, we're also highlighting the different career paths that a person can take throughout the organization. So I make sure that within the first 3 months of the apprenticeship, they actually are going to sit in several key divisions within the organization. And that's one, to get them exposure, but also so they can kind of sample and see the various career pathing it can go, whether that's going to be in strictly following the maintenance path, or going in branching into engineering, or in site management, or continuous improvement, or quality assurance. Every single one of those aspects of our business, they spend time in. And also all the training, all the mentors know to make sure they're always tying back what's being learned to how it's utilized here in the organization, and how you can build on that to the next steps. Because the having that context is what it tends to help, because that not only are they learning the skills, but they're also learning the context of how they can utilize that, and how they can build on that to further their career. So it's not you're building a box, you're learning these things, and this is going to be your box forever. It's like, no, this is your first step, and from here you get to pick the direction you get to go in. So I guess planting those seeds early on, and showing how they can progress into those areas that interest them, helps definitely helps in terms of retention, in terms of maintaining the interest, and actually the motivation for them to want to learn more.
Mm-hmm. Great. Tony?
I'd like to add on to that and say that something that we do that really we found helps our apprentices is we do a pre and post presentation every single work rotation, so that then they have to give us a presentation on what they learned and why it's important, and how they're applying their school to the work together. And then from the mentors, giving them feedback on what they did great and what they need to improve upon, and the apprentice to the department to give them the feedback on what they would like to see different in the future. That two-way street of feedback really helps, one, strengthen the program, and two, make the apprentice understand that we're here as a company to help them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. And Tony, you had your hand raised too.
Yeah, I was going to say, from the behavioral side, I think one of the things that our apprentices appreciate is the fact that we treat them like one of the gang. They're as soon as possible, they can work independently, and they feel like they're part of the crew, and they're treated like an adult. And I think that goes a long way for retention and the success of the program.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from the audience that I'd like to briefly answer before we go on to more of the discussion. And that question is how big are your companies, and how many apprentices do you have? So this idea of the ratio between your company size and the apprentice. And I think for those of you with multiple plants, I'll leave it up to you how to answer that, whether it's the plants just with apprentices. Tony, do you want to go first?
That is a tough question to answer publicly. What size of company? Let's just say we have 3 factories. At one factory, we have 8 apprentices, and one factory we have 4. I'm sorry, 6. and that's out of a total population of about 500.
Great, thank you. Verena, would you like to go next?
About 500, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we have also several sites in North America, but our Minneapolis location is around 100 people, and currently we have 11 apprentices.
Great. Chris?
So currently, Brose has been doing training, you know, as an apprenticeship program since 1902, I believe was our first apprenticeship award. So we globally, we do, I want to say 200, 300 apprentices per year. In North America, it goes around 4 to 6 per site every single year.
Per site? Okay. And Jason?
So we have a total employee base in North America of around 16,000. So I won't go over that. Those numbers will skew it. But taking on a site-by-site basis, we have 2 that are currently at one of our sites. So we have a total of 8 in cohorts right now. So the average, we have 2 at one site, which has an employee base of just over 200. We have 4 at another where the employee base is 360. And another one of similar size, actually it's 400, and they have 2 apprentices in their first cohort. So we average each cohort per site. The initial class tends to average between 3 and 4. The additional planned increases are between 2 and 3 right now per site, per year.
All right, great. One of the, another question up from the audience that we have is whether any of you have experience with transitioning service members and hiring veterans or the military community for apprenticeships. Do any of you have veterans as apprentices at the moment, Jason?
We are actually, our first apprentice was someone who transitioned out of the military. So one thing that we have pushed, and this is a little bit of a side topic, but it gets back to the main point, is that we do not just focus in on recent graduates from high school or college to enter our program. We early on started to make sure we focused in on transitioning military members, as well as individuals who are looking at second careers. So those are not your high schoolers. One of our other apprentices he's a second career person. He spent 15 years in insurance and realized he didn't get any satisfaction out of that. So he's now in his second year of his apprenticeship as a mechatronics technician. So, but going back to the military transitioning, it is a great resource. The one issue that tends to come up, which is actually very well corrected, I don't even want to say corrected, but expanded upon as part of the apprentice program, is what you'll find is transitioning military personnel tend to be very specialized in a particular category. So if you find someone who was a mechanic, they might have been a very good mechanic for diesel engines. I'm using this a very specific example because that's what our apprentice was. He was a diesel engine mechanic. And that was all he had. And that was great because he understood tool usage, a lot of the basic fundamental knowledge, and entering into our curriculum, the mechatronics curriculum, he was able to use that as a springboard and really base off that to expand outward. So he was able to get the electronics and the PLCs. So he hasn't tested out of the program early, but he is definitely at an advantage for being able to apply a lot of the mechanical concepts while he continues to expand on electrical PLCs. So it is great because they already have the commitment, they understand the training, being able to dedicate and focus in on both the training aspect of it as well as the execution of that, because that's similar to the didactic process that the military uses for training their personnel. So there's a number of, and the nice thing is most of the military branches have dedicated outplacement services and partnerships that are both national, regional, and local, depending upon where you're at. So I have become best friends with most of those organizations. They can be in very unique locations, such as the middle of nowhere, Kansas. But the thing of note is that, especially for transitioning military, geographic location is less of an issue because they do get that relocation service as part of their transition out of the military. So you might be talking to someone who is in Nebraska or Louisiana, but they're open to moving to a larger regional area. So it's actually a very good feeder if you have multiple sites to get individuals into smaller markets that you might have.
Great. Thanks so much. Now we have a lot of, oh, Jim?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to this discussion that there are additional tax credits at both the state and federal levels for hiring of veterans into not only apprenticeships, but just your regular job openings if they fulfill that. That can be in addition to any apprenticeship specific tax credits that are available in your state.
Great, thank you. We do have a number of questions left and not much time, and so we're going to move into a little bit of a lightning round where we're not going to cut anybody off. I'm not going to mute you, but just keep your answers brief and we can get it through. We have a question on hiring mix that we touched a little bit of, hiring high school grads versus experienced hires or incumbent workers. I know all of you do hire a mix of incumbent workers and high schoolers. Is there a particular percentage? Is it, like 75% young and, and I mean, not, obviously you're not doing this intentionally. I'm not saying you're intentionally trying to hire a particular age, because I know you're not, but the way it works out, the way it has worked out in your company, is it typically, more commonly your, late 20s experienced hire, or is it more commonly the young people? Tony?
Yeah, here at Scot Forge, we have a goal to hire 75% of our manufacturing folks from our farm team. So our farm team consists of high schoolers, apprentices, and four-year college interns. That's our goal. And we're not anywhere close to that yet, but that's our goal. So
Great.
we're going to grow our own talent, and thus the name farm team.
Love it, love it. Does anybody else want to touch that one? No, Verena?
Yeah. So in our experience, around half of our classes, apprentice classes, are fresh from high school. The other half is more experienced. They had a job or they had started college but got out of it and did odd jobs and want to get finally back onto a career track. So we have a nice mix, I feel, between young fresh high school graduates and more experienced, so that they can each mentor each other on schooling skills, learning skills, but also on mechanical skills or life skills in general. The older folks in.
Okay. Interestingly, that actually matches what we see across the programs. When we look at the employer consortium that we have, it doesn't tend up to be about half and half. Fresh high school grads or people with less experience versus more experienced hires. So interesting that you're right there in the middle there. Couple of other questions is, and this is, are all of your apprentices over 18? How would you handle insurance for somebody under 18?
They're all over 18.
Yeah, same. We actually made the conscious decision for over 18 for right now, because there are a lot of concerns when you have someone who's under that age at the site. So
we have people that are under 18, that are 17, just recent high school graduates, but the way our program is structured, that they spend the first 16 weeks in school. So then usually by the time they graduate, it's the end of the year coming to our company, and then they're 18 when they arrive on site. We do offer a pre-apprenticeship program as well, where we bring in high school juniors into our facility over the summer, and we work with our legal team on figuring out what we can do for them. But they're more of a temporary worker at that point.
Okay. All right. Let's see. We have some questions about the apprentices paying for school. And what I'm going to do, just in the interest of time, is, so we can get that question answered, is explain a little bit how both of these programs are structured with Matt Squared and ICATT. And in Matt Squared and ICATT, the employer does pay all the cost of the college as a way to attract more young people. Attract more young people to the program. So all of the college costs are paid by the employer. There is typically an agreement that the apprentice stays for 2 years after the apprenticeship is done, or else has to repay that money. Now that is a state by state law. Some states, in all the states we work in so far, that's fine with the state law, but if you're not in one of our states, check. on how legal that is to get them to pay back to college. But that is the part of the program structure to attract more young people to manufacturing. And that's and so the apprentices don't pay for any of the school unless they drop out, in which case they pay back. Let's see, in terms of apprentices being required to track information, they are required to keep a logbook. I would love to talk more about all the different ways to use a logbook, but we don't have time. I will say that we have resources we're developing for that, for best practices for using logbooks, and so you can reach out if you're interested, or that's part of the things that we do to help. Also running through, again, sorry to actually, you're asking about DOL registered apprenticeships or IRAP or unregistered company specific. Both MAT Squared and ICATT are a registered apprenticeship program with the DOL, and we encourage our companies to register their apprentices as part of that. That does open up a lot of grant money, tax credits they typically do require. Not all of our companies end up registering though. So whether you can have a successful apprenticeship program without DOL registration, but you're just losing those advantages for that. So it's a little bit both, and they are not IRAPs at this time. So that answers that. Let me just run through here. Any other questions? Oh, we're just about out of time. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in on that because there's this notion that the IRAP means that you don't have to follow any of the federal regulations with respect to apprenticeship. That is not the case. The standards recognition entity is required to follow the federal regulations, and like anything else, stuff flows downhill. So there is still a expectation, even under IRAP, that you are going to meet through your apprenticeship program the industry standards that apply to that occupation. The value of registered apprenticeship is that you're bumping up against those industry standards that have already been established. So presumably it takes less time, and all of the ICATT occupations that are registered have been approved under the registered apprenticeship. So you don't, as a company, have to go through that process. It's already been done for you by ICATT.
And MAT Squared has support as well to do that in that state. I'm looking at the time, and it's 10:57 Central, so we don't have a lot of time. We do still have to do our giveaway though, and get everybody out of here on time. So first of all, I would like to thank all of our panelists. It was really great insight. We didn't even cover half of the things I wanted to ask you guys, but we are available. So anybody watching, all of these companies are has been very helpful. So if there's anybody that you would like an introduction to, they're all nodding. I'm going to guess that they're probably going to say yes. You can contact us, the organizers, and we'll be happy to put you in touch with the people. And then some of the questions that you have, there's a question about starting a consortium. That would be best. Reach out to us, and we can talk to you about that offline. So like, I know you can't hear everybody, you can't hear the whole audience clapping, but I'm going to clap for the whole panelists. So thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much. So before we go, there is one more thing. And that is, let's see, the giveaways. And I realized I wasn't showing these pictures earlier when I was talking about my giveaways, so you didn't get to see the gift boxes. But the Home for the Holidays gift box is your cookies, chocolate, and a puzzle. Then you've got your beer and pretzels gift box. No beer. So we're going to use a random number generator to decide who the lucky winner is of this. So these are the rules. You have to say it's going to be the Google random number generator. And so, Doris, how many people do we have on our, how many people do we have here today?
63.
63 people. Okay, so this is the Google random number generator. I'm going to generate the random number. Ooh, number 62. Who's number 62?
Is Vincent Beller still around? Can you raise
your hand, put something in the chat? All right, I'm not able to see. Also, in the interest of time, we're going to assume Vincent Beller is still around. So Vincent, congratulations. We'll be in touch in order to communicate about this. For prize number 2, Home for the Holidays, puzzle, hot chocolate, and cookies. Let me do another random number generator. 58. Doris, who's 58?
Todd Ray.
All right, Todd, congratulations. You got some hot chocolate cookies and mugs. So yes, so we'll be in touch to make sure that you get that. By the way, that will be shipped after November 1st. They're not shipping those yet, but that still give you plenty of time to have hot chocolate and cookies and family activity before the holidays. And maybe we'll get an early number this time, this random number generator tending to the end of the list. Here we go, one more time. It's not quite the same suspense as when the wheel turns, but we'll see what we can get. 6. All right, so we did get one at the beginning of the list. Who's number 6, Doris?
Belkis Capellis.
All right, great. So Belkis, congratulations. You've got the beer stein pretzel and cheese mix, sausage, there's some peanuts or something in there. So nice with friends. If there are any dietary concerns with these boxes, then talk to us. And you're not locked in case there's something's going on with that. So no worries there. So let's see. So that brings us to the end of the discussion. Let's see. So I do have 2 contact information here. So if you're interested in ICATT, MassCourt is Michigan specific. ICATT is sort of generally the other regions of the country. Contact information is here. We could get you in touch with our panelists if you'd like, and we will be making the presentation and the whole recording available for everybody. So, no problem there. So without further ado, oh, it's 11:01. I'm 1 minute over. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. Very valuable insight, and all the best. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right, Doris, we're going to end the webinar. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Cheers all.